What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are checking out the B52 ATX100, if it lasts through this video. Let's do it! Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amps, guitars, cabs, speakers, overdrives, pickups, I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that are probably way blown out in the camera that they're looking at, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on the way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today we have a nice Guitar Center special on display here. I ordered this amp off of Guitar Center's online use site. In the pictures, it was really clean, looked really good, and was at a decent price. It was $300, which these amps don't really come up that much, and honestly, I'm not even gonna give you a backstory on this amp because I don't really know anything about it. I just know that B52, they made cheap tube amps that didn't sound too bad, and this was one of the models that I have always wanted to try. They don't come up often. So anyways, it came up at $300 and I'm like, you know what, at that price, should be able to get my money back out of it once I'm done with it. Let's check it out. So when it showed up from Guitar Center, I could feel the amp flopping around in the box and I already knew that we were in for trouble. So lo and behold, I pull the amp out of the packaging and it is broken on pretty much all three sides of the head shell. Granted, these are MDF head shells. They're not the most durable. But, I mean, this thing, if it was packed well, it probably would have showed up just fine. So anyways, I'm gonna make this video. I had to put my own preamp and power amp tubes in the amp because it wasn't working properly with the tubes that came in it. I will swap all the tubes back into the amp, and then I'll take it back to Guitar Center promptly once we're finished seeing how this thing sounds. But everything is functioning on it. Once I put my tubes in it, it sounds pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. I had a B52 AT100, which a lot of you guys have asked me about in the past, and that is not a bad sounding amplifier either. It definitely is looser and fatter sounding. This one is tighter and punchier. It's almost like the AT100 was kind of like the rectifier style, low end and low mid focus, and then this one was like, all right, let's tighten it up a little bit. But they generally seem to have the same sound from what I recall. With all that being said, this amp has two channels. It's got a clean channel and then it has a gain channel, and then the gain channel has two different gain modes. There's a green and a red, or a gain 1 and a gain 2, and there seems to be some slight voicing differences between them, so we're gonna explore both of the gain channels. We're gonna say to hell with cleans because we're not stupid idiot losers, and we're gonna see how good we can make a, roughly $300 used tube amp sound. So if you ever find one of these without the head shell conveniently smashed by Guitar Center for you, to see if it's something that can work for you if you're on a limited budget. So for that intro track, I was using my Gallagher Typhon guitar with the Hypernova pickups. They are a modern high output ceramic pickup, and we had the Boss SD1 on in front of the amp. We are going into a 90s Ampeg birch cabinet with vintage 30s loaded up, and I've got an SM57 on those V30s. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the channel controls. I'm gonna put everything back to noon. I will note there is a mid-cut function on this that functions on both gain 1 and gain 2. I'm not sure how the foot switch works, but I believe that everything is technically foot switchable. And we are going to turn our gains down. We're gonna start on gain 1, which is where we were for the demo. Over here in the master section, you have a low resonance type control. Doesn't really seem to do a ton, but it does make a difference. I have the master volume cranked up higher just because that's where I liked it, but we'll explore both cranking the master versus cranking the channel to see what types of difference in tone it makes. On the back of the amplifier, there's really nothing to note. There's nothing that controls any sort of the functionality on the front of the amp or the tones. So with that being said, let's kick this thing out of standby. This amp is noisy. I don't know if it's noisy by nature or if it's noisy because it took a little bit of a beating and shipping, but even at a low gain setting, we're getting a humming through the speaker. All right, so here is what we have with gain 1 at 9 o'clock, everything else at noon. So honestly, what I've noticed right off the bat with this amp is the treble. Very sensitive, it's very bright. There is no presence control on this amplifier whatsoever, so you have to control all the treble with the treble control. Control the treble with the treble control. Who would have thought? All right, so we've got that treble dialed back. And still, you know, it's bright. It's a bright amplifier. We're gonna turn that gain up and see if we can kind of fatten things up a little bit because it's sounding kind of transistor radio-y. Overall, I mean, it's not a bad tone, but it is a little bit lacking in the low end, so let's get some bass going. And we still aren't really fattening the amp up any at all. I'm gonna go ahead and pump that gain up to noon. All right, so it's got kind of a cool, you know, crunchy rock thing going on. So if you wanted to do even a crunchy classic rock tone all the way up until like a, you know, kind of a mid-gain, like a punk rock type tone, it could definitely do that. So it's really hard to get that treble dialed out. Let's back it down even more. And it just does not want to go away, even with the treble rolled down that much. Let's dial down even more. Because this amp has a lot of mid-range, for sure. That mid-cut is going to come in handy if you're not a fan of having a lot of mid-range. So that even dialing the mids back kind of calms down that upper frequency that's a little bit annoying. Let's go over here. We've got a low resonance control. Let's start pushing that up and seeing if we can get some more low-end fullness out of this thing. All right, now the amp has started to fill out. That low resonance definitely did make a nice little difference there. It's got decent enough string clarity. These pickups help because they're a very clear sounding pickup, but overall, it's not gonna be the clearest amp out there, but I have heard amps that are much more expensive that are much muddier at the same time. So not bad. I would say great for the price range. Let's go ahead and push that gain up even more because you guys are here for the belligerent amateur thrash riffs. Right away, the main difference between this amp and the AT100 non-X model is the low end on this amp is much, much tighter, which of course you guys know I'm gonna be a big fan of. Very tight, even without a boost. I mean, all that needs to me is a little bit more saturation, a little bit more bite. Let's push that treble back up again because the gain is gonna be pulling some of our high end out. This amp gives me strong rectifier vibes with the overall voicing and the overall gain structure. The AT100 is very widely known as the poor man's rectifier, and I totally get it because I've always thought that they had somewhat of a similar voicing, and it's here in this amp too, but it's just tighter. All right, so let's get that gain up even more. Let's go to 9 o'clock. Not a bad sound by any means. It is getting a little noisy through the speakers, but nice and full on the lows. It's pretty balanced in the mids, with the mids rolled back a little bit, and the treble has just enough bite for my liking. It's not a bad tone whatsoever. Not bad, getting a little flubby on that low end though. Let's actually pull our bass and our low resonance back just a tad. Super tight, just like that, super tight. That's really cool. Let's push that gain up even more, getting a lot of noise through the speakers, so I have a feeling it's gonna be very saturated. All right, so it is getting a little bit muddy with the gain pushed up that high. Let's actually pull that gain back just a tad. Let's kick in our little mid cut here and see what that does. All right, so mid cut in. Wow, it cuts the mids. Shows you just how much mids are in this circuit, because when you dial it all the way up, I'm like, oh, that's plenty of mids, and then you kick the switch out and you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of mids. So let's pull it back. Definitely get an early Metallica vibe off of that with the mids in. Let's see what happens if we push the mids up with the mid cut engaged. All right, so that mid knob is very upper mid focused with the gain cut engaged. Mid cut, not gain cut. All right, so let's roll that up to about 1 o'clock. Let's pull that mid back. That's a nice balance right there. You guys know I like my mids, but I think that sounds pretty good the way that we have it dialed. Let's get some more bass. And some more low resonance. That's pretty tight on its own, honestly. Very tight on its own without a boost. With the mid cut in, it definitely gives it more of a rectifier modern mode voicing. It's got that low mid emphasis for sure. So let's kick that out. All right, so we are definitely gonna have no issues cutting through a mix. Let's turn on a boost. Let's turn on the MXR Badass Modified Overdrive. And that kind of tames some of that upper mid frequency because the mids in the OD or the MXR are a little bit rounded. Pull the mids back. Let's get some more low end. And let's turn our gain down a little bit. This amp sounds good. I would have no problem using this amp, other than knowing that it's probably gonna have a meltdown because B52s are notoriously unreliable. Let's try the dead weld boost in front of it. It's So a little bit less of an round mid emphasis. Let's turn the mids back up, treble down a tad. Let's get that gain back just a tad. Not bad at all. There are some harsh treble frequencies that I wish that I could dial out, but overall it's not a bad tone whatsoever. Real quick, boom, D standard. It still sounds great. It's awesome. Does downtune just fine. We're running out of time. I spent a lot of time on gain 1. Let's go over to gain 2. I'm gonna dial everything back to noon real quick. Actually, you know what? No. We are going to leave it pretty much as it was. Let's see the differences, the inherent differences directly between these two channels. Definitely smoother, more compressed. It seems to have more gain on tap. And just be a lot darker overall. Let's get a little bit more treble. Treble comes on fast. Let's back the treble down. Let's get a little more mid. Mid control is definitely placed in a different frequency. All right, let's play that same riff again. Woo! All right, so we've got some unpleasant upper frequencies. Let's kick the MXR overdrive back in. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that. It's more modern, dark, kind of more low mid bass, I guess. It's definitely tight. Let's pull the gain back because there is more gain on this setting. It sounds good, but overall I liked gain 1 a lot better. Gain 1 was more open. But in standard it sounds good. I like the way that that sounds. I don't know, man. This amp sounds pretty good. Let's pull those mids back a little bit. I'm fairly impressed, I gotta say. Although I did like my AT100 quite a bit too, so let's kick that mid cut in. So let's see if we push the mids with the mid cut engaged. That sounds good to me. Let's roll that treble back just a tad. If I were to ever buy one for myself, I would take it to Wagner Amp Repair and see if we couldn't do a little EQ mod just to kind of control those frequencies a little better, but overall, it doesn't sound bad at all. All right, finally, last but not least, guys, let's check out a little drop C riff. Let's kick in, what do we want? Let's try the Mud Killer on this thing, because I like it. All right, let's kick that mid cut off. Let's try that drop C riff and then we'll call it a day. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me today on the B52 ATX100. I've got to return this to Guitar Center before it completely falls apart on me. Try to get it back there in one piece, but what did you guys think of this amp? Did you guys think that it sounded good? Did you guys think that it sounded terrible? Really curious to hear your thoughts and opinions. As always, do you have any experience with it? Have you ever played or owned one? Leave all that down in the comments. I'll be sure to meet you guys down there and chat about it, stumble over my words some more. If you like this video, consider hitting the like button and subscribing on the way out so you don't miss any more stuff like me running through busted amplifiers from Guitar Center, because it's not the first time it's happened. And if you want to support the channel, go down in the description of this video where all my affiliate links can be found, including Sweetwater. Those are the people that you should buy from. Click my Sweetwater affiliate link, get yourself something nice. I get a little kickback, it costs you nothing extra, and it helps me afford more broken gear. Or you can consider adding your name to this list of incredible people by joining my Patreon community and supporting the channel that way. I'll love you forever, whether you want me to or not. And last but not least, consider joining my Facebook group, again down in the description of this video. It is a great community and is a positive, dickhead-free environment, and that's the way that it's gonna stay. We would love to have you guys. So thanks so much for watching. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.